That first leg at Loftus was a reminder of what the Champions League is in Africa. This Champions League that we have on the continent is made up of moments. Moments overshadow matches. Coach Rulani didn't lose in the semis, didn't lose, Coach Mangoba, Coach Pitso, didn't lose in advanced stages because they were outplayed or because they chose the wrong tactics. They lost because of moments. A moment in the CAF Champions League can take you from a 1-0, a cushy position, to 90 plus 4, a team scores and they make it 1-1. And it changes the outlook of what the second leg is going to be. Coach Cardoso was not brought into Sundowns to change how Sundowns plays, especially in the Champions League. He was brought in for the moments, for the maturity, for the focus over the course of an entire match. This Pyramids team is not the teams from the PSL where you can wrap a game up in 20 minutes and not face any threat. This Pyramids team is not a team that you can outscore and keep going pound for pound with, as Pirates found out. Unlike a lot of the teams that Sundowns is going to face, this Pyramids team is one of the teams that can keep running for 90 minutes. Just yesterday, they were able to win 5-1, if I'm not mistaken, one of the highest scoring teams. But it's moments that define the Champions League. Now, there's a lot we can speak about tactically, looking back at the game and then looking forward to what we expect. I think Mamelodi Sundowns had some weaknesses across that pitch, right? Whenever you bring in Aubrey Mudiba, in as much as he's a great offensive player, defensively sometimes he tends to lack, and he was sometimes isolated by that right back, Pyramids. You face a choice to say, do you keep Mudiba in, or do you bring in a Lunga and go for maybe defensive solidity? You look at the midfield. And what was interesting about the midfield is that where Sundowns has been so great with a midfield 3, Adams, Allende, Mokwena, what they opted to do for this game was to bring in Arthur Salesh a little bit forward, keep these two here, and maybe the idea was to have Mudiba sort of cover them or add an extra ball-playing element there or an extra midfielder there. But what you lose when you lose about Adams is the ability to support Utebza. Utebza didn't have enough support because what Allende and Adams do is take turns going back and forth, and having an extra player in the base of the midfield, or not the base, the middle of the midfield, right? It means that Utebza doesn't have the extra burden of having to be a pseudo playmaker for Mamelodi Sundowns. Now, I understand why Sales was brought in. I think Sales was brought in so that you could make a front 3, a front 4, and maybe push the guys wider. You saw Ribeiro playing on the right-hand side, and try and limit what Pyramids does with the overlapping left and right back. I get it. I understand it. We saw what number 15 was doing. We saw when they started crossing how that changed the game a little bit. But what it does is that it takes away Ribeiro. Now, I've been one of the guys that have stood up for Arthur Salesh in the Sundowns team from the beginning, to say that he's not a striker, he's more of a number 10. But he's more of a linking number 10. He likes to play those short little passes. He's looking for the through balls. So when you have your 2 players wide and you have Reyners in the middle and him standing there, the tough part becomes, who do I play the ball with? I've often advocated for him to come in and play with Ribeiro as almost double 10s, so that Ribeiro has somebody to play off of should the defense be looking at him, and then Usales has somebody, like I said, who can play wall passes, who can play through balls, who can play with there in the center. I think Allende, obviously, with the role that he was playing, had to play a little bit deeper than normal, as well as Utebza. I think, again, the most important player for me is Ribeiro. And every time we've seen Ribeiro out wide, there's been an issue. Again, I understand why he did it. To try and pressure the defense on the wing back positions to stop them from pushing too hard, or at the very least think about it. But not having Ribeiro central and having Reina's central is kind of odd to me, because they've found joy having a Matthews and a Reina's coming in from the sides, with Ribeiro playing that sort of Firmino type role, sometimes making late runs into the box to go and score the goals that he scores. So that was a little bit of an issue. Okay, so I know I stopped the video a lot, and a lot of you are wondering, why are you asking for money? So I wanted to show you. I asked for money because I want to do more of this. Huh? But the truth of the matter is that it took over an hour in order just to render that shot. And it takes even longer when I'm doing my normal content, because guys, here's the unsung hero of the channel. And unfortunately, Shem, but the screen is broken. I have to use a second screen and the performance is not up to it. So I'd really love to upgrade things like that. And when you look over here, this is what the setup looks like. Rehenga di patlo and rehenga di green screen, which is a reality of being a South African content creator. Also, this is what people think is my studio. It's actually my house. So if you still don't know that I'm doing all of this from my home, then I don't know. But that is essentially what I want to do. More of these cool things. But I need you guys to please help me out by donating 50 Rand or more into this account. You know, we're fighting for multi-choice. And for multi-choice, but there is subscription models all over the place. And I'd love to give the biggest quality while also being able to pay my rent and do things like that. That is where your money is going. And I promise to give you only the best content that I can if you do throw something in. So I just wanted to show you guys what I want to do with your money. I want to take this South African football and fulfill my dream of taking it into the future. But thank you guys so much. Remember, this is the bank account that you deposit into. Get back into the video. I think that the space between the front players and the defense was a little bit too big. So what you saw was that Ufistin Mayele, even though Pyramids maybe couldn't play as wide as they wanted to, especially in the first half, they were finding that if they were able to get past the players, Sundowns, who weren't necessarily pressing as hard, when they were able to get into those spaces, Mayele found himself 1v1 or having to make runs in behind the Sundowns defenders, which actually almost worked out well for them. He found some spaces past Abolibusa a little bit that maybe should have taken advantage of, but it's not something you want to do over and over and over again versus a team of Pyramids' caliber and scoring ability. And then, of course, once they figured out Sundowns' setup, they overloaded the right-hand side, then sent number 15 a little bit more at that left-back position, going over and over and over that side, which I believe is part of the reason why that cross comes in. But in any case, I think there are weaknesses. What I would do with Sundowns going forward, I know a lot of people have spoken about Sundowns having to come out and score an early goal, having to come out and you know, try and put Pyramids under pressure. I don't know if that would be the right approach versus Pyramids, because Pyramids does have the ability to go and score back. And if you do commit and overcommit, especially with a 1-1, you don't want a situation where Pyramids yakora, and then now it becomes a little bit more of a mountain to climb. I think Sundowns needs to go back to that 4-3-3. They need to go back to maybe having Lunga at left back, bringing Adams back into the midfield so that you have those three around each other with the ability of adding to the attack. You bring Ribeiro central, you let Reyners and Tash come in from the wide areas. I think it's going to come down to Sundowns again controlling the tempo of the game. One of the big problems that Pirates had was that if Pirates wanted to play, you know, they met a team that plays and then they thought, okay, masdlaleni sonke, and you can't do that versus this Pyramids team. You will find yourself under pressure. There's the question of Umshishi. I don't want to disrespect Umshishi, and I don't want this to sound disrespectful, so please listen to me. Let me land. Umshishi has not been in this Mamelodi Sundowns team for much of the season. Remember, he was injured, rehab, coming back. He hasn't been. I think he made his return versus Ahly Koloftas. And where I hear the arguments that were made that Umshishi coming back can lift the crowd and lift the players and give you a little bit more energy, the truth is that Sundowns hasn't gotten this far doing those type of things. And I think it's one of those conversations that we have in South African football where we believe, man, lama player amnandi are the ones that we need to call on when things get tough. And we forget that Bonabo Sales Laba, Abo Ribeiro Laba, have been the linchpin of what Mamelodi Sundowns has done this season, Abo Reinas. And maybe you don't change everything that Sundowns is doing at this point. Maybe he comes in and he becomes a super sub later on. But Sundowns should be focusing on playing the football they've been playing up to this point. And unfortunately, that doesn't include Azwane. Unfortunately, it hasn't included MIM. And I think it's also a fine line. I also want to hold myself accountable to and hold myself back a little bit in saying that what Cardoso did in that game wasn't necessarily wrong. I don't think the tactics, I don't think the choices he made were wrong. I started this off by speaking about how moments define CAF Champions League games. But Umshishi, I don't believe is going to be the answer for this game. I think the answer is going to be a maturity that Sundowns has shown since they played AS FAR Rabat and they decided not to go too hard in the second half. I think what's going to be very important in this game is going to be nerves. South African teams tend to shake when they get to these places. They tend to overthink. They tend to want to do different things. They tend to become too smart, right? They tend to want to do all of that. Instead of stick to your guns. The guns that have got you into this place are the guns that want to get you out. And the guns, unfortunately, are not comfortable guns. It's 1-1. Can you trust that you will be the team that scores 90 plus 2? Can you trust that you can play your football as you've played it and then hold your nerve until 90 plus 2 to score and win the game? That is the question that Mamelodi Sundowns has had to answer throughout all of these years. That is the question that has killed other coaches, rulani, for all of these years. Can you hold your nerve? Ahly hold their nerve, until it feels like it's the final kick of the game. They know that somewhere along the way you're going to shake. And remember, Pyramids is also a newer team in the Champions League. So can Sundowns be the Grotman that they've been this season up to this point? Look at what happened with Ahly. They conceded early, but they held on to the luck. They showed the balls, the cojones, to get to the luck. And that was the deciding factor versus Ahly. Are they able to do it with the burden of the second star? With the burden of maybe carrying South Africa right now? With the burden of all of that, can you keep to what you have been doing and win the game? Or will you buckle under the pressure and maybe do things that you weren't doing? Ask Coach Jose Rivero. So I'm looking forward to a very, very incredible game. I think the one thing that plays into Mamelodi Sundowns' favor, like I said, if they do go back to what they were playing, is that Pyramids doesn't have a break. They don't know how to slow down. They don't know how to control games. They don't know how to, just hold possession or play a low block. They're going to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And I think Mamelodi Sundowns is one of the few teams in African football, I think, that are well poised to not just absorb whatever they're doing, but to tire them out, to play the ball, to be pragmatic, to bring in Williams, to bring in all the other guys, to make them run, to make them chase, to make them tired, maybe, and then take advantage via Boreinas. Now, if the opportunity presents itself early, take it. Take it. But that has been Sundowns' ethos. So hopefully Cardoso can finish the job that essentially he was brought in for. The shift away from the South African coaches, I think, is partly informed by those guys up there being able to hold their nerve. ES Tunis being able to hold their nerve versus Sundowns last season, up to a point where they could, steal a goal here, steal a goal there. Now it's 2-0, we've gone through. So hopefully Cardoso can do that. Hopefully Mamelodi Sundowns can find a way to win that second star. But the truth of the CAF Champions League is it's all about moments. And the question will always be, who's going to take the moment? Is it going to be you, or is it going to be the other guy? That is what they have to answer here. Looking forward to this game. I'll see you guys on the next one.